question for you. When was the last time that you looked at your estate plan? If life has changed since you had it drafted, your plan might need to change also. I'm Darcel Lobo. I'm an estate planning attorney in the Seattle area, have been so for over 16 years now, helping clients with estate planning and with probate. So let's talk about your estate plan and when it's time to update it. Because if you have a will or you have a trust, maybe it's from 5 years ago or 10 years ago, or maybe even longer, how do you know when it's time to update it? In this video, we're going to answer that question. How often should you review your estate plan, and what type of life events mean that it might be time for that update? So first one, let's start off with how often should you review your estate plan? My general rule of thumb is about every 3 to 5 years. You should at least be looking at it and making sure it still reflects what your intentions are, what your wishes are. But outside of that time frame, we should be doing so sooner if there's a major life event in your life or in the lives of anyone who's named in your estate plan. Now, what does that mean? What is a major life event that might require you to update your estate plan? Well, here are some life events that should trigger that we might need to look at your estate plan and make some updates. If you get married or if you get divorced, we probably should be looking at your estate plan to make sure it's still accurate, because it may not be. If there's a birth of a child or an adoption of a child, we might be looking at your estate plan to make sure we make some updates there, right? If your children were minors when you drafted your estate plan and now they're adults, we don't need a guardian anymore, and you might want to change how you've outlined distributions to them, right? Now that they've become adults, maybe there's some spending habits or there's other concerns that we need to think about now that they're adults. So that might require us to at least revisit that distribution and make sure it still reflects what your wishes are when it comes to that distribution. Maybe you've moved to a new state. Now, moving to a new state does not necessarily mean that you have to get a new will or that you have to get a new trust. But you want to make sure that you have it reviewed by an attorney licensed in that new state to make sure that there's something in there that, would be an issue in that new state. So for the most part, when I review out of state estate plans, we don't need to do a new will. We don't need to do a new trust just because they've moved, but maybe there are some updates that we need to do. So moving to a new state can be one of those life events that necessitates at least a consultation with an attorney to make sure does everything still look good. If somebody is in your estate plan who has passed away, right, might want to look at some updates to your estate plan in that circumstance. Now, a lot of estate plans that we do, we already name a backup in that situation, right? So maybe you've named John Doe as your power of attorney. But usually in our power of attorneys, we have a backup, an alternate. So if John Doe is unable or unwilling to serve, we have Jane Doe, right? So your documents might already provide for what happens if someone's passed away in your estate plan. But it's a good idea to at least review it and to make sure that no updates are needed because somebody passed away. Also, if you've had kind of significant changes to your finances, to your assets, right? If you have acquired more real estate, if you have acquired more investments, you've had growth in those assets. If you didn't do tax planning when you initially did your estate plan, you might want to consider doing some tax planning to protect your estate from any taxes. At Washington state level, the threshold is $3 million per individual for estate planning purposes for taxes. And so if you have surpassed that number, if you had growth in your assets, that's great. But we might want to look at how can we minimize or eliminate any tax implications from that growth of assets upon your passing. So those are some kind of life events that might trigger, let's at least sit down and review the estate plan and see if we need to make any updates. Now, why do these updates matter? Why do you need to update your estate plan? Well, we want to make sure that we keep your estate plan consistent with what your wishes are and what you want to have happen. That's why you did your estate plan in the first place, was to make sure that what it is that you wanted for your assets and for your family, for your loved ones, that those wishes and distributions are actually happening in the way that you want them to happen. And maybe what you wanted to have happen 10 years ago It's not what you want anymore, but we have to actually update that estate plan to make sure it reflects what you want now. Also, we don't want to have any confusion or conflict down the road. That's why you're doing an estate plan, right? We want to eliminate any conflicts down the road among family or our loved ones. And so we want to make sure that our estate plan reflects what it is that we actually want. And we want to make sure your estate plan still works for your current situation and what your current needs are, right? Those things can change as you progress through life. What you need or want when you're in your 20s or 30s versus when you're in your 50s or 60s versus when you're in your 70s or 80s, right? Like those things can change over time, and they usually do. And so we want to make sure that your estate plan is changing as you need it to change and as your wants and desires for your estate changes and as the assets of your estate change. We want to make sure that what you want to have happen is actually what happens. So what do you do next? So you've found your estate plan, you found that will, you found that trust, you've looked it over, and you figured, maybe it's time for me to make some changes here. So what I tell a lot of my clients who have estate plans that we want to update is I don't want you to make changes on your original documents. Don't make changes on those documents directly. But if you have a set of copies of those documents, you can go through and make notes of those changes. I can't tell you in hands it's been so helpful when someone's come to me and they've had a copy of their will or their trust and they have gone through and made notes of what names they want to change, what distributions they want to change, what gifts they want to change. That's very helpful for me as your estate planning attorney so that I know exactly, okay, let's talk about these notes you have here, maybe some things you didn't consider. So during our consultation, we can talk about what those changes are, what your objectives are, and how we can make sure that that's fulfilled for you. And so the next step is to schedule a consultation with an estate planning attorney, right? Is to bring your prior documents, either copies or the originals, have the consultation. Again, here at our office, we do them over phone, we do them over Zoom, we do them in person, whatever is best for you. We're happy to accommodate for that. And then we'll just kind of go through, what do we have in the old estate plan? Maybe what changes do we want to make? And we'll get those done for you. So all in all to say, life is going to change and your estate plan may need to change along with it. And if it's been a number of years since you've reviewed your will, reviewed your trust, it might be time to pull it out, give it a look. And if everything looks great, there's been no changes, great. But if there are some things you found, I forgot that I left that to so-and-so, or I forgot that I named so-and-so, and that's not going to work anymore for whatever the reason may be, reach out, schedule a consultation. If we're able to assist, we're happy to do so. So our contact information is all listed below for you, our phone number, our website, all that good stuff. Reach out. We're happy to see if we can help you. And if so, we'll schedule that consultation and we'll get those changes done for you. All right, thanks and have a good one.